So welcome everyone to our trial class for Shnayim LeYom. This is a new idea that the person organizing, Yair and Steffi, organizing it for the Hebrew department. They asked me to do an English year once a week. And the people joining, some people are my students I see already. So you guys can participate because you know all this stuff already. The shares for people I didn't teach before. So if I ask a question, don't answer unless you don't know the answer. And the questions I ask are going to be questions that enhance understanding, not to, I don't want to know what the answer is. I want people to think about the question. The goal of the class is not to review what you studied. The assumption is doing 14 chapters a week. The goal is to give insights on everything you've read and present the book from a book point of view. So what I want to do today is not just study the first 14 prakim, try to understand why we have Sefer Yehoshua. Notice, why was Sefer Yehoshua canonized? And more than that, why was it written? I'm not interested so much exactly who's the author, because I'll say it's Yehoshua. But whoever the author might have been, what was the purpose of the book? It's why do we have the book? And my assumption is if it's a book of prophecy, it's not just to tell you what happened, it's to give some meaning, some prophetic meaning to the book. Okay, so just for the fun of it, anyone want to suggest a reason why the book might have been written other than just to tell you history? Give me a classic. Don't be afraid. Give me a good classic firm reason why we would have a book.
To show that the nevuah to Moshe is actually taking place.
That was God made a promise and it came true.
Right.
Okay. So that's exactly I call that the wrong answer. It's a good answer. But let me ask you something. What did God promise Moshe? What would he do? What did God promise Am Yisrael about the land of Israel?
They will inhabit it.
Yeah. Does Chumash ever talk about God promising the land of Israel to the people of Israel? I know Rashi talks about it in the first Rashi in Chumash. But does Chumash ever talk about God promising the land of Israel to the Jewish people?
To Avram?
I guess so, okay. And to Yitzchak?
Yeah.
And to Yaakov?
Yeah.
And Yaakov to his sons, and his sons to their sons, and Yosef to everybody? I think God talks about it at the burning bush. It's like a mega theme in Chumash, isn't it? Now, speaking of keeping promises, did God tell us he would help us conquer the land? Right? Rabbi Moses, right? Rabbi Shields.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, let's say the conquest wasn't complete. We just read Parshat Breshit. What do we learn from Parshat Breshit? When something goes wrong, what do we do? In general, what's our custom? When something goes wrong, what did Adam Rishon do? Something did wrong. Something went wrong.
Blame others.
You blame others, don't we? And it works beautifully. It's masavot siman labanim. So if our conquest isn't complete, who should we blame? Think logically. If God promised us we'll conquer the land of Israel, and let's say the conquest isn't complete, who should we blame? We can blame God for not keeping his promise. Now, for those of you who've read Sefer Yehoshua, the first 12 chapters, was the conquest complete or not? Again, in the first 12, we have 14. In the first 12 chapters, is the conquest complete?
Not yet.
Mikey, you're saying no. Okay, come on. Yeah, so proof to me.
What'd you say?
Anyone want to say it was complete?
Yes, that's where I was too.
Yeah.
And
so
I went over to say hello to Steph again. I hope that was the right thing to do. But yeah, we were CII because that's who was putting us up. I hadn't reached out to.
We need to do a quick news, okay?
Can we maybe define what conquest actually means? Does that include settling?
Wait, I'm going to mute everyone first. I'll let you go back on in a second. Okay. Okay, now let's go back. And I'll repeat my question again. Was the conquest complete? Okay, so you were saying something about settling and conquering?
Yes. My question would be: does conquering only include the war itself, like the action of going into the land, fighting the other nations, or also does that include settling the land, going there into the new home.
You're talking about what's called menucha and nachala. First we have to conquer the land, then you have to settle it. Two different stages. In fact, if you know the structure of the book, the first 12 chapters talk about the conquest of the entire land. And from chapter 13 to 20 talks about the individual, every tribe doing their own nachala. But I want to go back to chapter 11, okay? Because that's in the Chomer. No, we need not this Bible. We need the book of Yehoshua. If you have your Tanakh open, you can look in your Tanakh. I'm using the English Hebrew one here. Chapter 11, we'll go over the outline in a minute. It says as follows. I'll just read the last line of chapter 11. Pasach Gimel. Make it nice and big. And make sure it's nice and clear. Here we go. Vayikach Yehoshua et kol haaretz. Kolcho asher diber Hashem el Moshe.
Anyway, I'm now...
Let's read this again. I'll just translate it. Yehoshua took the whole land, just as God had told Moshe. That's what Rabbi Shil's talked about, right? And Yehoshua gave it as a nachala to the Israel, based on their different divisions for every shevet, and the land was quiet for more. What's it look like from here?
It sort of reminds me of when the Goldmans, in Chestnut Hill, wanted a minion. I asked
Wait, I didn't understand the answer? Or that was an answer. I'm sorry. Okay. Is he trying to mute when something forgot to put up the mute building? What I want to talk about is that it sounds from the end of chapter 11 that everything's perfect, right? God kept his promise. Yehoshua took land just as God promised. We kept the land, and we gave it. Not only we conquered it, we have nachala. Every tribe got their nachala. There's no war, no more war, and every shevet has their nachala. What's the problem with that? If we jump to chapter 13, look how it begins. Yehoshua is the king, and remember 13 is after 11, I think. Yehoshua is old, okay? And God tells him, you're getting old. Ba'aretz nishara harbe me'od l'rishta. No, it's not settled yet. This is unsettling. Hope you understand my pun. That in chapter 11, it says the conquest was complete and everyone got their nachala. And here it says, not only did we get their nachala, the land wasn't conquered yet. The rest means to conquer. So there's a lot of land left to conquer, so it wasn't complete. And then we have a whole list of Eretz HaNisheret. And tons of time left over. Now, if I want to jump ahead for a minute to another book called Sefer Shoftim, which I think follows Sefer Yehoshua, because in the beginning of Sefer Shoftim, if I'm not mistaken, where's Sefer Shoftim here? Judges? I think Sefer Shoftim is after Yehoshua dies, because that's the first line of the book. And in chapter 1, after Yeshua's gone already, what do we see in Pasach Zayin? V'lo horish Menashe datatat. And then the Ephraim lo horish, Zvulun lo horish, got it? Asher lo horish. It keeps going. Naphtali lo horish. Understand? It seems like 7 of the 12 tribes didn't conquer. Then we didn't settle. They didn't conquer the area they were supposed to take. In fact, it's not only a contradiction between Sefer Shoftim and Sefer Yehoshua. In Sefer Yehoshua itself, going back to Yehoshua, look in chapter 18. Where are we? Back to Yehoshua. In chapter 18, it talked about the Nachala of Yehuda and some of Yosef. But in chapter 18, what's Yehoshua do? Yehoshua gathers the whole nation together in Shiloh. We'll talk about this next week, why they go to Shiloh. They bring the Ol Moed there. And here it says the land is conquered, but there's several tribes left, 7 of them, who didn't take their Nachala yet. 7 tribes. Here it sounds like the conquest, the military conquest was complete, but the settlement of every tribe, 7 of the 12 didn't finish. And Yehoshua yells at them, there's still more conquest to do, which God gave you. So here Yehoshua is telling the people, there's more land to take that God gave you. But back in chapter 11, he said the whole land was given to him. Hope my question is clear. Let me just summarize it. You know what the Bible critics do with this? You know what they say? There's different sources. Like, the book seems to contradict itself because some of the psukim claim that the conquest was complete. In other psukim, it's obvious it wasn't complete. So it sounds like, you know what they say, 2 different traditions and things like that. Let me show you one more proof that the conquest was complete. Where are we? But that's next week's material, but this is preparation for next week, we can call it. Where are we? In chapter 21 of Yehoshua. Towards the end, mamash the end of chapter 21. What's it say here? Listen carefully. Vayitein Hashem l'Yisrael et kol haaretz asher nishba letet lavotam v'yoshu v'yeshuvu ba. Here it says that God gave Israel the entire land, just as God had sworn to the forefathers. Okay? And they conquered it, v'Yehoshua v'yeshuvu ba. Remember that first, I forgot who asked that question in the beginning, wanted to differentiate between settling the land and conquering it. Here we both conquered it and settled it. They had rest from all their enemies around, just like God promised their ancestors. No one stood in their way. All their enemies were taken. God gave them everything. And listen carefully. This is key to the book. Everything God promised came true. Now, I'm so happy that Rabbi Shields said in the beginning that God kept his promise, right? What's Yeshua say? That what's the book about? That God kept his promise. But what's the problem?
It didn't fully complete it.
The book is saying God kept his promise, just like he promised our ancestors. But when you read the book, he didn't keep his promise. Why? Because the land isn't conquered. So make up your mind. Do you understand the stira, the conflict? Some psukim claim everything's perfect, all done, complete job, and God kept his promise. Other psukim say there's not left to be conquered. So how are we going to solve what appears to be this contradiction? What I want to claim is that's why the book was written. Because remember I said in the beginning, when something goes wrong, blame somebody else? There's no doubt that conquest was far from complete. There's no doubt about it. But who's to blame? God kept his promise. Who didn't keep their side? Am Yisrael didn't keep our side. And now I'm going to read the book like a lawyer. I don't have a law degree, but don't worry about it. But I want to read it like a lawyer and try to understand the book from a different point of view. And I want to prove it from Yeshua's speech in Perek Gimel. What I want to prove, if I look carefully, what did God promise? God did not promise he'll do it for us. God promised to do it with us. So I'm going to read God's promise carefully and show God didn't promise I'm going to give you the land. It's all yours. I'm going to give you an opportunity to conquer the land, and I'll be there to help you on condition. So I want to begin with something which relates to what we do every day. I'm going to open up carefully, because I'm going to skip Sefer Bereshit, because those are very general promises. I want to look carefully, what did God promise about conquering the land? So I'll try to go in order. Let me share my screen, and we'll take a little tour of Chumash, okay? I'll just start with Sefer Shemot to show us the theme from the beginning. In Sefer Shemot, we enter a covenant at Har Sinai, we get laws in Parshat Mishpatim, and after we get a whole set of laws in Parshat Mishpatim, 3 chapters of laws, ending with Lot Vashagri B'Chalevimo, God promises as follows after the 10 Commandments in Parshat Mishpatim, and right before we say Nasa Merishma, we keep Chumash in order. Hinei Onochi Sholech Malach Lefanecha. God tells Moshe to tell the people, I'm going to send a malach in front of you to guard you on the way, to bring you to the land I promised, referring to the land of Israel. This malach, who appears to would have been Moshe Rabbeinu had things gone right, be careful, obey him. Don't go against him. Because this malach I'm sending, he can't forgive your sins, he can't lift away your sins. My name, my reputation is with him. And therefore, if you listen to what should be Moshe Rabbeinu, the malach I'm sending, who's a human who's telling me what to do, if you listen to my malach and do what I'm saying, what will I do? Your enemies will be mine, your adversaries will be mine. Meaning, I'll help you conquer the land if you obey my laws. Okay? And my malach will lead the way and bring you to the land, etc. And when you come in, don't bow down to the idols, etc. And we continue with all God's promises, how we'll help him conquer the land. But God's promise is on condition that we keep his mitzvot, which makes perfect sense. The whole goal is not just living in the land of Israel. God's goal is not that we conquer the land of Israel and live there. God's goal is that we become a nation representing God. We said in Har Sinai, you'll be for me a nation representing God. So God will help us accomplish that goal if we do our side of the deal. But if we're not willing to be his people, if we don't serve him properly, why should he help us? In fact, he'll let us fall to our enemies. Now, the Meraglim, remember God sends them? So they say the land is good, but the enemies are difficult, and you need a miracle to conquer the land. Now, the walled cities, no one can do that without God, divine intervention. Moshe tells him, God can help you, but on the condition you keep his mitzvot. If the people don't want to keep the mitzvot, or if leadership doesn't think they're able to, if we try to conquer the land of Israel, which is impossible without divine help, and we're not worthy of God's help, we're all going to die. And therefore, a large group members of leadership thought the wisest decision was to go back to Egypt and not commit suicide, attacking a nation that's not, if the nation isn't really ready to serve God properly. But that's a class on the sin of the spies. But let's look carefully now and Sefer Devarim. I can bring more examples from beforehand, but Devarim is the best example. I want to get right to probably the best one, which will explain Sefer Yehoshua. Okay, we can bring a lot more. In fact, let me just, on the way to chapter 11, let's look at a couple great examples. Chapter 4. I'm sorry, Sefer Devarim. Sefer Devarim, chapter 4. Where are we here? Moshe is giving a speech to the people, about to give in chapter 5 begins his speech of all the mitzvot. Moshe, before his death, in the 40th year, reviews all the laws of Sefer Devarim, of how they have to behave once they come in the land. But he says, listen to the laws I'm teaching you. You want to stay alive and conquer the land? You better keep these laws, which God's giving you. In other words, part of the military preparation for conquering the land of Israel is knowing the mitzvot we have to keep. Because if we don't keep the mitzvot, God won't help us conquer the land. And our army alone isn't able to because the nations are formidable. Our army's not strong enough to defeat there and take over the walled cities. Now, here. Then he goes on. Let me go to chapter 5. How's the speech begin in chapter 5? Moshe tells the people in chapter 5. Moshe tells Shema Yisrael l'chukim mishpatim, learn them and keep them, etc. He goes on, and he quotes the covenant of the 10 Commandments and why Moshe gives them instead. And in chapter 6, he says as follows: V'zot ha-mitzvah b'chukim ha-mishpatim, which God's commanding you to teach your children to keep in the land you're going to take, okay, in order to learn to fear God, okay, and make sure to keep all these mitzvot for your good, just like God promised. If I go back, right before the Shema, at the end of chapter 5, which is right before chapter 6, okay, here, keep all these laws, okay, keep all the laws I'm going to teach you in Sefer Devarim, like God commanded me to teach you. Don't go left or right. If you want to stay in the land and live there and not be thrown into exile, keep all these laws. Moshe is teaching laws to make sure that we're worthy of conquering the land. Now let me get the explicit one, because that's what we say every day, daily Kriyat Shema. The second parsha of Kriyat Shema, remember Vayim Shema Tishma Mitzvotai, which ends the whole unit, the mitzvah section in Sefer Devarim. Keep my mitzvot, I'll give you rain at the right time. If you don't keep my mitzvot, I'll have to punish you, etc. Stop the rain, and you'll have to lose the land, etc. Now, if you want to stay in the land, keep my mitzvot properly. Now, when Shema is over, this we don't say every day, but it's important. I want to show you here in Devarim, this is the introduction to Sefer Yehoshua. I will prove it in a minute. Listen carefully. Kim shmor tishmurun et kol ha-mitzvah azot. If you keep this mitzvah, which is what? Which I'm commanding you today, to love God, lavat Hashem lechem, to love God, to walk in His ways, doing mishpat and tzedakah, to cling to God, l'dav gabo. On the condition you keep my mitzvot and have the right attitude. Then borish Hashem et kol gamela bifnechem. God will help you conquer the land. You'll be able to conquer nations greater and more powerful than you. Chav Daled is key to the book. Wherever your feet walk and march will be yours. From the widest borders, from the Har Prat till Yom Achron, wherever probably to the Mediterranean. Your borders can be the widest expansion. No one will get in your way. Your fear of you. God will put the fear of you in the eyes of all those nations where you're going down to take. Wherever you march. Just like God told you. But then there's a blessing and a curse. Blessing if you keep my mitzvot, the curse if you don't keep my mitzvot. In other words, God is saying, my promise of conquering the land is conditional on keeping the mitzvot. Let's just do just icing on the cake. Back in chapter 8, I could have brought it on the way. Kol mitzvah that I'm commanding you today, keep. I'm trying to show you it's not broken record. It's a recurring theme all through Sefer Dvarim. The Moshe is telling the people over and over again, if you want to be worthy of defeating enemies that are impossible to defeat without divine help, you have to be worthy of divine help. But on top of that, you have to take an initiative and conquer. If you're passive, it won't happen. So there's two conditions. One is I need to take initiative and conquer the land. God will help me as I conquer the land, but I have to be worthy of conquering the land. If we just cross the Jordan and sit back, nothing will happen. Now, I'll give you an example of God's involvement. If you're English speakers and Americans, you know football season. Okay? There are quarterbacks, right, who call the plays and the quarterbacks who run the plays. In other words, if I'm a football team and we have a team strategy, sometimes in the old days, there was a quarterback, he called the plays and he ran the plays. Nowadays, the head coach, the practice will run, he calls the plays and the quarterback executes the plays. What I'm getting at is Yeshua's job. I'll go back a step, 40 years. When Moshe takes Am Yisrael out of Egypt, who decides the strategy of how we're going to get out of Egypt? Who decides about the plagues and when to bring them and how to do them? God masterminding the whole plan. Moshe is his man on the field. Moshe doesn't make his own decisions. God tells him what to do. God tells him, go to Pharaoh, tell him this. God has the master plan. God takes us out of Egypt. Moshe simply runs the place, doesn't call the place. When it comes to conquering the land of Israel in Sefer Yehoshua, it's Yeshua's job to conquer the land. God says, your job is to conquer the land. You're the general. You're in charge. You have to come up with the battle plan and strategy. I'll be there to help you, but you have to take the initiative. Because we're becoming a nation, we have to slowly learn to do things on our own. God will be there to help us, but we have to be involved. So it's not I sit back and do a mitzvah and God will conquer the land for me. The mitzvah is conquering the land on our own, thinking, planning, natural strategy, take whatever strategy you have to do, knowing God can help you if you're worthy of his help. So I need to do things, be worthy of God's help, have the right attitude, the right commitment, and take initiative in conquering the land. What I want to show you in the book, whenever we take initiative, God's there to help us. Whenever we don't take initiative, nothing happens. And even when we do take initiative, if we sin, we lose it. We don't lose the battle. Did you follow that? That's going to explain the entire book from beginning to end. And that was the goal of this year, which we have time left, don't we? We started at, I lost track of time. We started at 12:30. We started at 7:30. Yeah, we have another half hour. Another 20 minutes. The shir is supposed to be about 45, 50 minutes. We'll have time for questions. But let me review. I hope it's clear so far. What I want to show you is, my claim is as follows, and I'm going to prove it from the end of the book. What I want to show you is, the goal of the book, from a prophetic point of view, is that Yeshua has to explain to the people, don't blame God for the partial success or partial failure. Don't blame God for the fact that conquest isn't complete. God kept his promise from beginning. Everything God promised came true. What did God promise? Wherever you go, I'll be there to help you. And wherever we went, God was there to help us. What didn't we take? When we didn't take initiative. And I'm going to suggest that. I'm going to show you Yeshua says it himself in his concluding speech. And that's the reason for writing the book. And let me explain why. I'll skip the first 5 chapters. Actually, I'll start at the beginning. From the beginning. What's the first initiative Yeshua does on his own? Someone tell me. The first initiative Yeshua does is to do what?
Command the people to get ready.
Number 1, okay. Remember, Achinu lechem tzeidah? If you want, remember that line, Achinu lechem tzeidah? Leaving Egypt, v'gam tzeidah lo asu lehem. We're sort of fixing the first one with the failure. That's just a cute one. What else does he do to take initiative in chapter 1?
The one, Mila, but that's not chapter 1.
He sends the
that's in chapter
Meraglim.
5.
He sends the Meraglim. No?
But in chapter 1, he does something else in that chapter 1. Okay? He reminds the 2.5 tribes to keep their promise.
Right.
What did the 2.5 tribes promise? Right? To lead the way, to be the front line. They're going to be the front line in Normandy. And when you take a walled city, the front line, why are the people scared from the report of the spies? Because there's walled cities. To take walled cities, there's casualties when you storm a wall. If you have enough soldiers, you can take a walled city, but you lose your front line. And who agrees to be the front line? That's the 2.5 tribes, which explains why Moshe takes the deal in a second, because it's going to encourage the people to take the land instead of disencouraging them. And he makes sure that the promise of the 2.5 tribes is going to be fulfilled. That's the end of chapter 1, isn't it? That's taking initiative to move. What's he do in chapter 2? What initiative? Does God tell Yehoshua to send spies? No. Now, the classic shir, when we teach this, it sounds like they're making the same mistake again, right? But it's a totally different. The spies in Chumash, and I'm sure if it was shir, I'm sure this is one of the shurim you were sent to. The spies in Chumash are a fact-finding mission of tribal leaders making a decision: should we or shouldn't we conquer the land? And in that decision making, I need to know how formidable the enemy is, and number 2, how worthwhile the conquest is. Why conquer land if there's no potential for an economy? So on the one hand, the land is good and fertile, good fruit, there's great potential. On the other hand, impossible to conquer. And then you have to decide, is it worth it? Had they come back and said the land isn't good, the fruit's no good, but they say the fruit's great, the land is really good, but impossible to conquer. But no, God's hoping they'll be so excited about conquering the land, they'll be motivated to take the land. And when they're told it's impossible without a miracle, they'll say, oh, but I want to do it, therefore I need to keep mitzvot to keep the miracle. I hope you follow the logic. God wants the Meraglim to say that the land is impossible, like Moshe Rabbeinu. Let me show you something. This is key to understanding here and beforehand. In Sefer Dvarim itself, in chapter 9, this is what Moshe tells the people. Shema Yisrael, this is Moshe talking in the 40th year here in his speech, before he dies. Shema Yisrael ta'over hayom et Yarden, l'vol l'reshet goyim gdolim v'atzumim Mecca. You're about to conquer a land, nations greater than you. He's talking just like the spies. Walled cities up to the heavens. Remember? Am Gadol v'Am B'nei Anakim, a nation full of giants. He's saying almost the same thing, the same report that Meraglim came back with. Asher yadad yata v'ata shamata mi yitaseh b'fnei b'nei Anak. No one can possibly defeat this formidable enemy. You need to know it's impossible with what? What do you need to know? That God can help you do it. God can help you conquer the land. Etc. And you'll be able to do that. And don't think you deserve it, etc. It goes on. That's a speech in the Devarim. But you need to know that by keeping the mitzvot, but remember how you were punished every time you sinned, etc. And then because the whole verse that you rebelled against God till now. Now it's time to turn over a new leaf. But Moshe is telling them again that don't think it's going to be an easy job. It'll be hard. But if you keep the mitzvot and have the right attitude, God can help you. But Yehoshua now takes initiative. He sends the spies. The spies aren't coming back to decide should we or shouldn't we. Yehoshua decided we're conquering. Yehoshua is sending military spies secretly who report back to the commander, not to the whole nation. It's a totally different mission. And it's got nothing to do with the first mission. The decision was made already, but Yehoshua is planning to take a walled city. How do you take a walled city? You need a breach in the wall. He doesn't know about the miracle yet. He's looking for a corroborator on the wall of the city. And therefore, it's not the fact that going to Rachav's house is on the wall. And therefore, if they can get Rachav to cooperate with them and know where her house is, we can sneak into the city through her house. There's a little sign they put on the window. And sort of, not as good as the Trojan horse, but it's a second best, isn't it? We can get into the city through her house, get the thing, and break through the wall there. And we can get into the walled city without having to storm the wall. Now, that might have been the original plan. But after Yehoshua sends the spies and takes his own initiative, what does God tell Yehoshua? I'm going to help you. What's he do? Crossing the Jordan, splitting the Jordan, which, remember, I don't need a miracle to cross the Jordan River because the spies got across with no problem. You know, nowadays you can jump across it. Maybe then there was more water. It was full, but there were bridges across the Jordan. I need to scare the enemy. And therefore, Yehoshua, I need the miracle of the splitting the Jordan to put faith of the people in Yeshua, to put the faith of the people in God, and to scare the nations around them. If we have time, we'll go back and see those inside. But by doing the miracle of splitting the Jordan, it's not to get across to the other side, it's to give support to the people of their belief in God in support of Yeshua, and to scare the nations from gathering up against them. We'll talk about the military side in a minute. So that happens. God helps them. Yeshua in chapter 5 is standing outside Jericho to plan the attack of the city. God didn't tell him yet that there'd be a miracle. And then as Yeshua is planning to attack the city through natural means, standing outside the city in chapter 6, what happens? A malach comes to him and tells him, I'm going to help you break the wall. By doing what? That's the 7 akafas and the original Simchas Torah with 7 akafas and Shmini and Hoshana Rabbah on the 7th day, if you know remember all those parallels. So again, Yeshua took an initiative to do a natural attack, and God helps him with a miracle to break the wall of the city. Once we break through the wall of the city, the army can take care of the rest. But to make sure to remember that God helped you, there's a special law not to take from the cherem. Right? Now, we're ready to take the eye. Yeshua sent spies to take the eye. They sent spies to come back. They take initiative. We send a special unit, 3,000 Seret Matkal, to take the city. I think Sheshesh Tesha was there also, etc. Maybe didn't need them because we're sure we're going to win. And then what happens? We lose. Why did we lose? Not because God didn't keep his promise. God said, I'll help you on what condition? You keep my mitzvot. What happened? Chata Yisrael. We know the story of Achan. And therefore we have to solve that problem. And then what does God help us with the next time? I'll give you a better strategy. How to utilize your whole army. We'll talk about the battle with the eye. Then we have the story of the Givonim, which we'll talk about soon, which is really awesome what happened. Then what happens? Yeshua takes initiative to help the Givonim against the 5 kings. Right? And how God helps them, we'll talk about. We know what happens. We have an opportunity with the 5 kings outside the walled cities. What does God do? Yeshua has an opportunity with the 5 kings outside the walled city, and Yeshua asks for Shemesh B'Givon Dom to give us more time to defeat our enemies. Again, Yeshua takes the initiative. What does God do? He gives them artillery support and flares. If you've ever been in the army, when you're conquering, you need the totchanim and you need avnei gabish. Okay, anyone's been in the army knows what I'm talking about. You need military support. You need light. You need flares, and you need artillery to slow down the enemy's retreat, to take advantage. We'll talk about that more in detail. Then Yeshua's taking another initiative. We'll see later on. He takes the south and the north. But I'm trying to show you, what does the book discuss? Every time Yeshua took initiative, God was there to help them. What didn't we take? Wherever he didn't take initiative. Now, let me show you all this in Yeshua's final speech, okay? Everything I just told you is in Sefer Yehoshua, but the problem is it's at the end of the book and no one ever gets there unless you do Shnayim LeYom. Because in school, we start with Sefer Yehoshua. Everyone knows chapter 1. Everyone knows about Rachab the baker. Everyone knows about the walls of Jericho came falling down. People might remember Achan and the eye. Maybe some people the Givonim story because the Rambam talks about it. Remember the Rambam says the Givonim didn't know the Rambam? If you know the Rambam. Remember the Rambam whether you can make peace or not with the 7 nations? So the Rambam says the reason why they didn't make peace, why they had to lie, because they didn't know the Rambam. But they could have made a peace, but if we have time, we'll talk about that. I'm sorry. Let me go back to our topic. I want to show you, it's a topic for next week, Yeshua Chav Gimel. Remember, there's 24 chapters in Yeshua. Perek Chav Gimel is the final speech on his deathbed. Perek Chav Daled is an epilogue, which happened earlier. We'll try to prove that next week. But I'm going to prove to you Perek Chav Gimel is Yeshua's final speech, and everything he just told you is in Perek Chav Gimel. This is why the book was written, is Yeshua's speech to the nation. All you have to do is read the speech. I'm going to share a different source sheet now, because it says it highlighted, or up wing. Yeshua outlined here. Just real quick, before we get to the speech, I'll show you later. The first 5 chapters of Yeshua, I don't want to do this. This is something you should know already. The first 5 chapters, we prepare for conquest. Chapters 6 through 12 is the conquest of the land. Chapters 13 through 12 is the Nachala, entering the land, and showing which ones took initiative. The 2.5 tribes, Yehuda and Ephraim, in Bnei Yosef, and the ones who didn't take initiative, the other 7. And the final speech is in the end, after the Nachala. So we're going to focus on chapter 23, and we'll go over there, who's to blame for the failure, and sources showing everything was conquered, and sources showing that they weren't conquered. We did all these sources inside, just a review of them. And what exactly did God promise in Breshit? It sounds like everything, but it's conditional based on all the sources we saw in Devarim. This is everything we did. And now I'm going to show you that the intro to Yeshua is exactly Devarim 11:23. And we'll get that in a minute. And then, if we have time, we'll talk about how this relates to Shirat Azinu, and we'll take a look at chapter 23. Listen, chapter 23. Then we'll go back and see everything inside. Yeshua came by biyamim. I can do this with the Hebrew. This is easy Hebrew, so I'll do it without the translation. Here, okay. Yeshua is getting old. Got it? Yeshua is saying this has to be his last speech because he says he's about to die. Etc. I'm getting old. I'm old. Okay. And look what God did for you. Look what God did for you. Who helped you do the fighting? You did the fighting, but God was there for you. Who gets credit for winning the war? Our soldiers, God, I'm not getting into modern day politics, I'll get in trouble. But basically, who gets the credit for our victory? When you win in a miraculous way, does God get the credit? We do the work, but with God's help, we're able to do it. When you say hello, how do you thank God for your victory? By thanking yourselves or thanking God for helping us in our victory, and remembering you have to be worthy of God's help. Okay. Now, he says, Hashem did the fighting for you or with you. Now, there's lots of, we see from here, there's more to be conquered, right? So I set aside which tribe has to do what, but it's not conquered yet. From the Jordan all the way from the river to the sea, okay? From the river to the sea, and Jeremy's smiling, okay. That's where they got it from, I guess. Okay. Now, what do you need to know? Who will help you? Not who will do it for you, who will do it with you. Is that clear? God's not saying I'm going to do it for you. I'll do it with you. It's just saying up until now. You did the fighting, but God was with you. God will help you continue. No, nothing at the end of the book, nothing's really changed. We're in the same situation where there's a potential. God can help you, but you have to take the initiative and help you conquer again the Horish. Okay? Just like Hashiri Ber, just like God promised you. Okay? And therefore, but be strong. On what condition? You better keep all the mitzvot, which God's written in Torah Moshe. Etc. Now, don't go left or right. Okay? Ki b'Hashem elechem tidbaku. Cling to God, all things from Sefer Devarim. Kasher sitem tiyamazem. And if you cling to God, Vayorash Hashem mipnechem, goyim gdolim atzumim, v'atem lo amad ish bifnechem ad hayom hazeh. Remember, amad bifnechem. Yeah, put this in Megillat Esther. So what will happen? God will help you conquer if what? If you take initiative. Now, and what will happen? One person can destroy thousands, right? And one person can press a button in Klilot, and thousands of people can be injured. No modern day connections, I'm sorry. If you go astray, you want to be like other nations, etc., okay? And you intermarry, etc., you'll know surely that God won't help you conquer the land. Conquest is conditional in our behavior. And there'll be the stumbling block in your eyes. Now, listen carefully, highlighted. Which is a nice way of saying, I'm about to die. That's why this has to be his last speech. Oh, he read Sefer Yehoshua, didn't he? You know what? Isn't that exactly my class? What's Yeshua saying? What do you need to know to know and understand? God kept his promise. He just said there's more land to be conquered. Is that crystal clear now? It's not a stirrup between books. It's the theme of the book. Yeshua is writing the book to support his speech here. What's he saying? What does Am Yisrael need to know? Don't blame God for lack of failure. Blame yourselves for not taking enough initiative. I'm giving you an opportunity. You have to take it. It's a one-time opportunity. And therefore, if you don't do it, it's going to come back and haunt you. But God won't do it for you, God will do it with you. Again, only on the condition you keep his mitzvot. And therefore, that's the idea, remember? Ki lo nafal davar, nothing fell short of what God promised. Everything God promised came true. Hakol ba'alachem lo nafal davar. Okay? And just like all the good things came up until now, that God promised, all the bad things will happen if you don't listen. Okay? If you break the brit with God, then it's right out of Shema. You can see the theme of Devarim here. Now, you understand Yeshua's speech? To prove his speech, I have Sefer Yehoshua. And I have a prophetic reason for the book and a logical reason for what appears to be a contradiction. Because the book isn't about how we conquered the land, but how God kept his promise that wherever we take an initiative, he'll be there for us on the condition we keep his mitzvot. Now, let me show you this in the book from the very beginning, from chapter 1. Now we can go back and read the book. Before I go back and read the book, let me go back and just review again what we said in Shema. Where are we? I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Oh, I stopped to share. I have to share a chumash now. I want to just go back and review Devarim. Devarim, where are we? Devarim chapter 9. Chapter 12. Or what? No, chapter 11. That's it. After the Shema. Listen carefully again, because we're going to echo this in a second. If you were students, I'd have you compare them and highlight, etc., but you guys aren't in school anymore. So you take my word here. Kim shemor tishmur et kol mitzvah azot. Asher anochem mesavetchem lasota. Lavod, if you keep the mitzvot to love God and fear God, then b'horish Hashem et kol gemel b'pnechem. God will help you conquer the land. V'shtem goyim dolim. You'll take nations greater than you. Kol makom asher yidrok. Remember this phrase: wherever you go, I'll be there for you with the widest borders. Okay. No one will get in the way, wherever you go. Before you forget all that, let's look at the opening lines of Sefer Yehoshua, almost word for word. Yehoshua chapter 1, Moshe dies, right? Eved Hashem. Yehoshua now is taking over. Moshe abdimet, vatakum, avor te Yarden. I'm giving you the land. I'm not giving it to you. I'm giving you the opportunity. The nitina is an opportunity. God's giving us an opportunity to take the land. He's not giving it to us. He's giving us a responsibility to take it. Okay, now listen. Sound familiar? That's Sefer Dvarim, isn't it? Word for word. You're about to conquer. What's God tell Yehoshua? Wherever you go, I'll be there for you. He didn't say I'm doing it for you, I'm doing it with you. Wherever you go, I'll be there. Okay? And now with the widest borders, the same borders we had during chapter 11. Midbar Levanon, Ad Nahar Gadol, Nahar Prat, again. Here it's from river to river, or from river to thing, but make up a new chant one day. Now, basically our widest borders. Listen. Lo yitaseb ish lefanecha, ko yimei chayecha. Oh, listen again, listen. Ko yimei chayecha, remember that phrase? Your entire life, no one will get in your way. No, if you fight, God will be there for you. Just like I was with Moshe, I'll be with you. I won't abandon you. Okay? But chazak ve'amatz, you have to take initiative, so therefore be strong. Because you're going to do it. God's saying, I'm going to do it, but you're going to do it with my help. Rak chazak ve'amatz, on one other condition. Tishmor et chol Torah asher tzivcha Moshe avdi, al tosim minim smol leman. Etc. Because the guide of how to conquer the land will be in Sefer Devarim, isn't it? This Sefer Torah, which you have to keep, the Sefer Torah are the laws of Sefer Devarim in the main speech. That's how to conquer the land, who has to fight in the army, setting up a Makom Asher Yivchar Hashem, Shoftim V'Shotrim, etc. A guidebook. Who goes to war, when you go to war, when you make peace, when you don't make peace. It's all the details of how to conquer the land are in Sefer Devarim. That must be Yeshua's guidebook. It's not learning Torah like Daf Yomi every day. It means Sefer Dvarim is Yeshua's guide of how to conquer the land, and all the laws that we just read about Shema Tishmu Im Lo Tishmu. Got it? Halot Tiviti Chazak Ve'amatz. God will be with you, not for you. I hope that's crystal clear. And therefore, that's exactly the introduction to the book. And now I'm giving you a logical, prophetic reason for the book. Yeshua has to explain that everything God promised came true. What did God promise? I'll be there with you on the condition you take initiative. And therefore, it goes through story by story of Yeshua. We take initiative and God comes and helps us. And therefore, when the conquest section of the first 11 chapters are over, before the Shirah, listen carefully. Now we'll read it like a lawyer. The last line of chapter 11. I'll just read it carefully. Okay. Vayikach Yoshua et kol haaretz, listen carefully. Kochol asher diber Hashem el Moshe. Now that's a modifying phrase. Hope you remember your grammar. This phrase, just as God told Moshe Rabbeinu, is it modifying Vayikach or haaretz? If you're not smiling, you didn't cop what I'm kidding. No, did Yeshua take the land that God promised Moshe, the widest borders? Or is Yeshua taking the land? Is he taking the land like God promised Moshe? My claim is, this is modifying Vayikach. How did Yeshua take the land? Just like God told Moshe. What did God tell Moshe? Wherever you go, I'll be there to help you. So Yeshua took the land just like God promised, that wherever he went, God was there for him. And Yeshua gave whatever Yeshua took, he gave to Nachalat, to the tribes. And there was quiet from war, but the war wasn't finished. So when I read it like a lawyer, I'm fine now. It's not a contradiction. How did Yeshua take the land? Just like God said he would. Wherever you go, I'll be there for you. And that's what the book comes and proves. And therefore, the first 11 chapters talks about all the initiatives that Yeshua took and how God helped. And when didn't God help? When we sinned. Hope that makes sense now? Now, that's that was the goal. That's the goal I wanted to get across on the first part. Now I'm going to go through now and talk about the military side. But I'm trying to show you the last speech in Paragraph Gimel explains the book and what appears to be contradictions. Yeah, Rabbi Shields.
When you skimmed Akev before, and there was a pasuk lo v'tzidkatcha, right?
Yeah.
How do we explain that if the whole idea is that it is based on our righteousness?
No. It's talking about midat hadin. I should have dumped you guys a long time ago. I'm giving you another chance. Okay. Don't think you're God's gift to the world. Don't think, we're on the nifchar and we can do whatever we want. Don't think you're getting land that you deserve it. Knowing you don't deserve something is why you deserve it. Remember the paradox of Yom Kippur? We're in Amkshe Oref, therefore we can't be close to God. We don't deserve to be able to go into Kodesh Kodeshim to relive Har Sinai. But what makes us worthy? Our recognition we're not worthy makes us worthy. And recognizing the importance of our job and our recognition of our frailty that we're not worthy of the job, but we so much want our job, God's willing to forgive us when we make mistakes so that we can learn from our mistakes. So it's a bit of a paradox, but it's a theme. That's all class in Chumash about how what makes you worthy is the fact you know you're not worthy. That's how I explain Lo B'Tzidkatcha, but that's a class on that goes back to Chet HaEgel and Midat Torachamim, and it's that's more into Kabbalistic stuff about the beauty of the what's good about evil is that you can learn from evil and do good. It goes back to the flood story and Yitzhar Dam Ra Menura, but that's a Shir in Chumash already, and that's already Shir Machshava. Now let's go back to take last 5 minutes. I want to talk about the military side because that's always fun because we live in Israel. From a military point of view, Yeshua has two major problems. That's why I have our little. You see my background today? Where's my background? Put the map of the Middle East there. Eretz Yisrael Shlema. I just said from Nahar Mitzrayim. I hope you got that. Nahar Mitzrayim to Nahar Prat. Let me show you another map. 1 second. You guys don't get my jokes, do you? 1 second. Where are we? Yeshua outline. I have a better map here. Map Middle East. This one. Okay. Here's the same satellite map I have in the background. But this is Nahar Mitzrayim. Got it? Now Delta. And this is Nahar Prat. That's the Prat and that's the Chidekel. And between the rivers, and it's a thing. Here's without getting into Iraq's history. And I think this is Iraq, and this is, I think, Persia. I think this must be the Persian Gulf over here. Nothing's changed, has it? From Nahar Mitzrayim. Now, God's not saying that our borders are not, the Nile River is never a border. The Nile River is the center of Egypt. And the Prat is the center of Mesopotamia. Our goal is not to have a border up to there, but there's always going to be a country in Mesopotamia on the rivers. It can be Iraq, it can be Ashur, Aram, Babel. But someone's going to be living in Mesopotamia. There's always going to be some superpower in Egypt. Our goal is not to take over those countries. God gives us a country between Nahar Mitzrayim and our Prat over here, which is nice and fertile. See the green? It's it's only a couple percent of the whole Middle East, but it's a good. You understand what's special about the land of Israel from this satellite picture? This is the green, other than the Nile Delta, right? The greenest area in the Middle East is exactly where Eretz Canaan is, and the Golan. That's why we like the Golan so much. You see the picture? That picture shows you so much about what the land cares. That's Parshat Ekev in a nutshell. There's Chita B'Sorah. Has to do with weather patterns, but it's a good land. And there's the Dead Sea. I hope you can see the picture in the side. I could share it with you later on. Anyway, I have to control my Zionism. Now back to so this land is God given, but we have to be deserving to live here. But it's a great land if we fulfill our potential. Now back to why do we do that? We're talking about the land that God's giving us. From a military point of view, there's always a superpower again in Egypt and Mesopotamia. And there's local peoples living. The people of Canaan. There's 31 city-states, but they're not a united entity, right? There's not what they would call Palestinians. There's no state there. It's a group of city-states, right? But they're not that united. There's, I think, 7 different nations, maybe. They're all descendants of Canaan of some type of sort. There's Amorim, Prizi, etc. Right? But they're not one united group. But what can unite these nations together? The hate of Israel. Nothing, no modern day analogies. But they can be fighting with each other when it comes to Israel. That we become the common enemy. And Yeshua's biggest danger, one-on-one, he has any city-state, he has them outnumbered. One-on-one, no problem. But if they all gather together, he's finished. Got that? That's key. Problem number 2 is walled cities. If you have enough soldiers who don't mind dying, you can take a walled city. Remember Normandy. Okay. But you're going to pay a heavy price on casualties. How do you take a walled city without needing a siege, without needing to storm the wall? Or take a long siege, which takes years, and people start complaining and demonstrating and trying to stop the war. In other words, how are you going to solve? Those are the 2 problems he has. Now, splitting the Yarden solves the problem. Problem number 1. Why? Just take a quick look at it. The first line of chapter 5 in Yehoshua. We're in Yehoshua, right? Chapter 5. What's the first line? Vayikishma kol machei Amori asher be'ver Yarden yama, v'kol machei Aknani asher yam asher ovish Hashem b'mei Yarden b'nei bnei Yisrael, vaymas labam lema od ruach b'nei bnei Yisrael. What scared them from joining up against us? Right? Splitting the Jordan saved the fear of all them joining up against us. How did God help us? You understand? We sent spies, and how did God save all the nations gathering up against us? Splitting the Jordan River, one of the goals was to get them all scared. Now, and therefore they're laying low in the meantime. But the second we lose the battle to the eye, okay, in chapter 8 here. I'm sorry, my mistake, chapter 7. Okay. We lose the first battle of the eye. Yeshua rips his clothes. Right? He says what? V'emer Yeshua, aha, Hashem Elokim. We're in chapter 7. Okay. Lama havarta avir hamat yarden letet lanu bi'ad amri lavidenu lo anu be'eretz Mitzrayim. Okay, we lost our battle. Vayishmu Knani b'chol yishvei haaretz v'nasabu eleinu v'yichrit et shmeinu min haaretz ma taseh shimcha gadol. Hey, they're going to learn we lost the battle. Our God's not helping us anymore. When he split the Jordan, our God's on a high. Now he's taking a break now. Remember, God, sometimes he's with us, sometimes he's not with us. And the fact we lost the battle of the eye is going to cause them to join up again. And therefore, then God has to give the answer. You guys sinned, and remember, Chata Yisrael, and that's why we lost the battle. And then Yeshua gives them a new strategy, how to use the whole army. But what I'm trying to show you is that, number 1, the biggest problem is all the nations joining up against us. Problem number 2, walled cities. How do we solve the first walled city? The first walled city we save with the miracle of Yericho. But remember, we don't need the whole wall to fall down. Rather, I need a breach in the wall. And therefore, when the wall falls down, it's not all the walls fell down, but one wall fell down, which is a breach in the city. Once we have a breach in the wall, the army goes in, and we have them totally outnumbered. But we can't take from the booty, because that's I don't get the share on the booty, but that's to show the first battle is from God. The fighter of the battle gets the booty when you want to attribute the victory to God. So the shalal goes to the victor, which is God in this case, but that's a topic that's already in Iyun. Now, the rest, I love this, the rest what happens. I don't want to call it a comedy of errors because it's not nice, but it's hashgacha pratis, that's better. And without bringing modern day analogies, how everything just falls into place. We make a terrible mistake, but it works out for our betterment. What happened? The Givonim pull a fast one on us, remember, because they don't know the Rambam that they can make a treaty. Remember, they can make a treaty they can be subservient to us, but they thought they can't. But what do? They get a treaty, don't they? And why did we sign the treaty? Because what did they say? They say the whole theme of Chumash. We heard the God's with you. Now, why are they so quick to sign the Nisim? Because what they say is exactly what we want to hear. Listen to what they say. Where are we? Share. I want to explain to you why the Givonim, why the Nisim are so quick to sign that treaty. What's that? That's in chapter 8, 9, chapter 9. By the way, Yeshua, God helps Yeshua with the eye the second time around with the strategy using the army properly. I'm sure you have a share on that separate here. Here. When the people heard about what all these things that happened, okay? Here. Now, when they see we start moving into the mountain range and we're being successful, we have ups and downs. Now they all gather together to defeat us. Got it? Now they're unified. Now, the Givonim are worried. Why? There's a I'll share one more screen. Sorry about that. One more screen. A little geography here. This you have to do on a tool, but here we are. This is my favorite map. See this mountain range here? You've probably seen this map before, but this is Highway 60, the middle of the mountain range. I need a annotate and there we go, a little marker here. That's good. Marker. Yeah, I think this is it. What color, whatever it is here. This is the top of the mountain range over here. We're crossing the Jordan over here. We come to land. We have to take the mountain range. Right here, let me get a different color. Oh, let me change my color. Color blue. Okay. Right here, there's a north-south highway going this way, and east-west highway going. This is not Imakai alone, or not. This should be Imakai alone. It's over here. In the middle of the mountain range is the area of Ramallah today, or Givon. So Yeshua's strategy will be divide and conquer. He takes Yericho, he takes the Ai, and the area of Bethel. Who's next in line? The Givonim know they're next in line. They're in the top of the mountain range, right on the border between north and south and east and west. They're in a very strategic position. That's where Ramallah or Bethel is a key city. The Givonim are right next to Ramallah. Remember the four cities with the Givonim, they're all together. They're the area of Ramallah today. It's super strategic. They know they're next. If you can't beat them, join them. And therefore, instead of fighting them, they make the peace treaty. Now, listen what they say when they come to make the treaty. What did they say? Where are we? Now, what did they tell Israel? Okay. What did they say? Here. They took Sakim, they put the stuff. What did they say here? Here. Bingo. Got it? They said the right thing. We're chosen to make a name for God. Am Yisrael is chosen to make a name for God. They're saying, listen, we hear about your God. We believe in your God now, and we're coming because we look up to your God. Etc. In other words, of course they're going to sign. It's a no-brainer. This is what we're hoping for in Sefer Dvarim, that all the nations will see. It's working. Of course we're going to sign a treaty with them, and therefore Vatak Yertanu Brit, and they bring the proof, etc. And therefore Yeshua makes peace with them, and we make a brit with them because it's fulfilling the goal of Chumash. Then they find out that they tricked them. Now, without getting to why what's Yeshua do now? Yeshua has a treaty with them, right? No, not to kill them. He doesn't have to help them. When the 5 kings join together to take the Givonim, Yeshua has a great opportunity. Why? Because the 5 kings are planning a battle against Givon. That's their internal war. But when the 5 kings go to battle against the Givon, the army's outside the walled city. So what's Yeshua do? By surprise, when the 5 kings come to take Givon, they're not expecting Yeshua to attack him. Therefore, what does he do? Yeshua brings the whole army by surprise, takes a long walk. That's a long walk from the Gilgal, from Yericho, all the way to the mountain range. That's hours of walking with the whole army. No one's expecting him to come. And out of nowhere, the 5 kings encounter Yeshua and they're not ready for them. What do? They have to run back home. They're not ready for that war. But Yeshua has the 5 kings outside the walled cities. And now they're on the run. How much time does he have? Until they get home. As soon as they get home, they're back to the walled cities. He has to chase them, but the sun's setting. And what's he ask for? I need more time. You understand? Yehoshua is doing the work. God's going to help him. And that's Shemesh B'Givondom. Yehoshua needs more time. Let me finish off these kings before they get back to the walled cities. He needs more time. And that's how God helps him. But Yehoshua takes the initiative. God gives support. Now, when he goes and chases their kings to the walled cities before they get there, the neighboring cities come and help them and take their cities. What happened basically? Because of the treaty we made with the Givonim, we solved the problem of the walled cities. You understand? We never have to take a walled city. Yericho, miracle. The our defeat. Remember, lemon became lemonade. What happened? Right? The defeat. What happened with the defeat? The first defeat of the caused them to make the mistake the second time around. So we take the army again, a small army coming in. We retreat. They leave the walled city because we're retreating again, just like last time, the stupid army. And then Yehoshua calls up the ambush when the army's outside the walled city and takes the city without the army in there. So the first defeat of the enables taking without taking the without having to take the walled city. And then the treaty with the Givonim enables us to take the walled cities of the south. Because they leave the walled cities to attack the Givonim. If we didn't make that treaty with the Givonim, we wouldn't have that opportunity. You understand what I'm calling it? Not a comedy of errors, but I'm looking for a better word. It's called hashgacha pratis. You follow? A modern day example. It wasn't our plan for Syria to fall apart, but God did a miracle. Remember? And God gets the credit for that one. Now, but it's just amazing. We might have made a wrong decision, but God helps us and turns, again, lemon to lemonade. And that's what the book is showing you. Look how God helped us. Now, after we take the southern kings, what happens? The nation of north, hey, this is getting bad. The nation said, hey, they took in the whole southern part. We better gather together what's left of us and attack them. So they gather up in the Galil to go and attack us. They come down, attack us in Gilgal. What do we do? Again, all the kings up north are outside their walled cities, planning a joint attack against us. What do? We do a surprise attack when they're in their camp, staging the battle with them and catch them by surprise. So because you understand the chain of events, because of the treaty of the Givonim, we're able to take all the walled cities without having to take a walled city. That's hashgacha pratis. Next week we'll see how that caused. That's why it's not complete. Why? As long as there's an existential threat, everyone's fighting. The second there's no existential threat, go get people to fight. I don't have to bring examples from nowadays. You understand? When there's the existential threat on the Jewish people, everyone joins the army. The second, leave us alone, everything's fine. People are not going to take an initiative if their lives are not in danger. And therefore, because we defeated all the armies without taking the walled cities, right, there's no more danger. We don't have to fight. Now go take the other walled cities. Remember, the armies are defeated, but the people are still there, and we don't finish the job. You understand what's going to happen? And we'll talk about that next week of why we moved the Mishkan to Gilgal to Shiloh, etc. But also, I'm trying to show you, chapter 11 ends basically of every single example how God's hashgacha pratis. Again, if the events of the last 2 years wouldn't fit so perfectly, it's just another great example of how to see the hand of God, how God gets the credit, and God kept His promise. If something goes wrong, we're to blame. If something goes right, God gets the credit. As he said before. But God gives us, if we're ready to see the hand of God and ready to take that victory, and God sees we can do something good with it, and not just say thank you, but thank you, then God will be worthy of helping us for winning more battles, etc., and hopefully having peace. But now I'll do that with a little tefillah. But that's our little study, the first half of Yehoshua. Next week we'll finish up the book of Yehoshua, understand the Perek Havdalah, which is the most important part of the book, the brit at the end of the book, and about the Nachalah, which Shvatim took initiative, and we'll talk about why we moved the Mishkan to Shiloh, and a little more geography. I'll stop here. I'll answer questions for 1 minute, because I promised to finish within an hour. But, Anya.
Anya, I forgot
Anya.
Thank you. In the beginning, you quoted from chapter 21 that God promises to erase all the enemies. And before that, you said 7 tribes didn't conquer every part of their land.
Didn't settle their area.
Yeah, sorry. I just wonder where that comes from, the interpretation that everyone who is in the land of Israel at the state of resettling, is an enemy.
Listen, there's a bigger question we have to talk about, which I'm staying away from, is what gives us the right to take the 7 nations? That's a theological problem. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit next week. Because it's a one-time opportunity because Chumash goes out of its way to tell them they're being punished for their sins. God's using us as a punishing tool. We don't kill them because they're in our land. The land belongs to God. It's the first Rashi in Chumash. Because they're losing, because of their bad behavior, God's taken away from them, and God had to wait hundreds of years until they sinned. Remember, Kilo Shalem and Brit Ben Abtarim. I can't give you the land to conquer until they're deserving of being thrown out.
So they are basically God's enemies, not the Israelites.
And therefore, we're God's shaliach, right? We're doing their execution because of their sin. Now, how does that explain women and children? Boy, that's a big problem. We'll leave that alone for another time. But Chumash goes out of its way to say they're being punished for their sins. Now, but Chumash tells us if we act like they did, the same thing will happen to us. I think we read that in Mincha Yom Kippur because it's so important. And we read that in Yom Kippur that we need to know why God gave us this opportunity. We need to know what we did to them, they'll do to us if we act like they did. Because the land belongs to God. Read the first Rashi in Chumash carefully and what he quotes from Yirmiyahu. Okay, so that's I think, and Rabbi Shields, we'll end with you started us, we'll end this with you. Bye-bye. Rabbi Shields, where are you from, by the way?
Well, when I worked at Berman, I remember you came and
that's where I know you from. Okay.
Now I'm by the yeshiva, but still Silver Spring. Why the mention of the lands, the boundaries of the Shvatim? What's the value added in knowing where?
That's a share. That's God's coming. That's echoes of Brit Ben Abtarim. When you hear Nahar Mitzrayim, Nahar Prat, Brit Ben Abtarim, with Yeshua's, that's a class in Chumash. It's Sefer Dvarim, half of Breshit, God's saying Yud Kevavke, God's about history. That's Brit Ben Abtarim. God's filling Brit Ben Abtarim. And therefore, I have all the imagery from Brit Ben Abtarim. Later, there's borders, but that's a whole share on Chumash of the two Britot, Shem Elokim, Shem Yud Kevavke.
And that will explain why we need to know where the boundaries are.
Yeah, that'll explain what the potential is. First, we have to take it. Remember the Rambam in Hilchot Trumot? First, we take Eretz Canaan. After we take Eretz Canaan, we can take more. But that's a long discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Okay, anyway, thank you, everybody. Send, I forget who's in charge, Izzy, who's ever in charge in Yeshiva. If you have comments, questions, ideas, and things like that, it's hard to keep myself to an hour because I can keep on, but people have football games to watch. I think that was a shikul. That NFL football starts around 1:30, 2 o'clock New York time, Eastern time. So we have to finish at least by halftime, or what's called red zone, if you know what red zone is. I have to keep on American sports. I know how to teach Americans. So but everyone, hopefully we pray for quiet and peace, hopefully, and victory, etc. But hopefully our tefillot and our actions will make us worthy. And we can learn from Yeshua. Let me check the chat. Oh, no, the chat. The chat real fast. I missed something by mistake. Okay. Oh, lose. Okay, lose. I'll deal with that next time. Okay, why the promised devil didn't come with conditions we'll talk about. Oh, and daylight savings time, very good. Okay, how daylight give them more time? Because you need to chase their enemy before they get to their cities. So the assumption is when it gets dark, they know the way home and we don't. It's when there's light, you can chase their enemy. Once it's dark, they know the way home, but we don't. So the second we're so used to having light nowadays, we don't appreciate what happens when it gets dark at night. And when in the month was it? You can figure out when in the month. If Shemesh B'Gedol B'Yamrech B'Mekai alone, you found what week in the month it was, and you see why it was a dark night. And do the math. It's got to be the second half of the month when they do your astronomy. When the moon, is in the east, and when the Shemesh B'Gedol, when the sun is rising and the moon, when you see the sun and the moon in the same day during daylight, when you see the moon at sunrise, it's the second half of the month. Which means as soon as the sun sets, there's no more moon. That means at the beginning of the night, there's no moon. Anyway, that's the class in astronomy. But that was a fun one. That's a Rosh Chodesh year. Okay, anyway, thanks everybody. Have a good week. And Mir Hashem, next week I'll be back in Israel and we'll do it from the Holy Land. Take care.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.